In this video, we'll be giving a quick revision to the topic life processes and also be looking at some of the important questions and the previous year questions on this particular chapter, so that all the important topics and the questions of this chapter will be covered and you will know what kind of questions will be asked based on this chapter and how much have you actually learned this chapter. Starting with a quick revision, what are life processes? So there are some of the basic functions which are done to maintain life, which include nutrition, respiration, transportation, excretion. First, speaking about nutrition. So nutrition is the process of obtaining and utilizing of food, and there are various modes of nutrition which include the autotrophic mode and the heterotrophic mode. Autotrophic in the sense they make their own food. Best example is plants, and they make their own food with the process of photosynthesis. And the heterotrophic ones are the ones which depend on others for their food. So it is a mode of nutrition in which organisms cannot prepare their own food. They depend on others. So the other categories of this include the saprophytic nutrition, holozoic, the humans would follow it, and the parasitic mode of nutrition. Saprophytic mode of nutrition in the sense it is a process by which organism feeds on the dead and decaying matters. So it includes examples such as yeast, rhizopus, and the rest of it. So speaking of photosynthesis, so it is a process by which green plants prepare their own food. So the raw materials which are required for photosynthesis. So the raw materials which are required for photosynthesis will include water and minerals, carbon dioxide, sunlight, and chlorophyll. So the products which we get are carbohydrate, which is glucose, which is converted to starch. So the equation in order to represent this photosynthesis is CO2 plus H2O in the presence of sunlight and chlorophyll will give rise to glucose plus O2. So the raw materials are water and minerals, CO2, and in the presence of sunlight and chlorophyll. So all these will be mentioned in the equation, and you have to write this equation when asked, and also write what are the process by which photosynthesis happens and what are the products which we get out of this. So the holozoic mode of nutrition. So it means feeding on solid food. So organisms take up the complex food into their body, and this is what is called the holozoic mode of nutrition. And it is followed by we humans, amoeba, dog, etc. So in this holozoic mode of nutrition, we observe that there will be herbivores, carnivores, and omnivores. We already know that herbivores in the sense animals which feed on plants only, while carnivores in the sense they feed on flesh and meat, and omnivores will have both plant and animals. So they'll have both flesh and plants. So examples of carnivores will include the wild animals like tiger, lion, and all these things. Herbivores will include the plants such as deer and cow, animals which are like domestic animals, and all these things we can include. While the omnivorous ones are that like the plant, humans, and dogs. So these will include in the omnivorous category of animals. So there are steps of the holozoic nutrition. That is the ingestion, digestion, absorption, assimilation, adhesion, and all these things, which we'll be studying in the digestive system in much more detail. So The steps in the photosynthesis include the absorption of light and its conversion to chemical energy, and the splitting of water and CO2 reduction to glucose. You'll be studying this in much more detail when you take up your class 11th or class 12 biology. But as of now, the important key details are as follows. Now, the human digestion. So, starting from mouth, we have saliva which contains the amylase. So, the digestion will start right from the mouth itself. And then in stomach, we'll have the HCl and pepsin, and there'll be mucus layer onto the stomach. And the small intestine will have the digestion and absorption will be conducted, and we have a lot of enzymes in the small intestine as well, such as lipase and all these things. And the large intestine is where the water absorption will take place. And we have the pancreas and the bile juice secreting liver, salivary glands, and all these things you have to remember. And moving to the respiration. So there are aerobic kind of respiration or anaerobic kind of respiration. Aerobic is with oxygen, which will yield more energy, while anaerobic is without oxygen, which will yield us less energy in comparison to aerobic kind of respiration. The human respiratory system, the organs which are nose, trachea, lungs, alveoli, and alveoli is where the exchange of gases, where O2 will enter and CO2 will come out. So this process of exchange of gases will happen in the alveoli. Next, transportation in plants. So xylem will conduct the water transport, minerals transport, while the phloem will conduct the food transport. And we know that xylem will be in unidirectional, while phloem will be in all the directions. Next, in humans, the transport. So we have blood. In blood, we have RBC, the WBC, and the platelets. RBC is red blood cells, WBC is white blood cells, and the platelets. So RBC is where we have all the oxygen stored in it, and in the WBC, we'll have the immunity, all the things which are required for immunity of the person. It will be fighting infections, and platelets will be useful in clotting. So next, heart. In heart, we have 4 chambers, 2 atria and 2 ventricles, and it prevents the mixing of blood as well. So our heart will have 4 chambers. So the advantage of having 4 chambers is there will be no mixing of blood. We also have 3 chamber heart and 2 chambered heart as follows. And the blood vessels. Arteries away from heart, they take blood away from the heart, while veins will bring the blood towards heart. And the capillaries will act as exchange or the common point for both the arteries and the veins. So these capillaries will form the branches or the junctions. Exchange points. Next is excretion. So in plants, the excretion is to remove wastes via leaves, resins, and gums. In humans, we have a proper excretory system, which includes the kidney. So kidney is the organ which removes the toxic substance urea from the blood and filters it. And we have the ureter, which carry the urine, urinary bladder, which is for the storage of the urine, and urethra is for the removal. And we have nephrons, which is the functional unit of the excretory system, which is present in kidney for filtering the blood. So it involves the filtration, reabsorption, and urine formation. So nephron is of that great use. So the important key points which you have to focus for examination will include that life processes. That is maintenance functions. Photosynthesis happens in the chloroplast. Small intestine is the main absorption site. Alveoli increases the surface area for the exchange of gases, and there is a double circulation in humans, the double circulation of blood. And then we have the nephron, which is the basic unit of kidney. So with these basics of this chapter sorted, we'll go to the important questions regarding or relating to this chapter and the previous year questions as well. Starting with the first question. So the question here says us that we have to, how do autotrophs obtain CO2 and N2 in order to make their food. Since it's a 1 mark question, you need to make sure that it should be in some 2 or 3 lines is enough for us to answer a 1 mark question. So basically they asked, how do autotrophs obtain CO2? So we all know that autotrophs will obtain CO2 through the process which is called photosynthesis. If you have to speak about the aquatic autotrophs, that is the autotrophs which are in water, aquatic autotrophs, then that will be due to the dissolved in water. CO2 will be in the water itself for the aquatic autotrophs. When we are speaking about the general autotrophs, we can say that it is obtained through photosynthesis. When you have to speak of N2, which is nitrogen gas, how do the autotrophs obtain the nitrogen gas? So they obtain it by fixing this atmospheric nitrogen into usable forms such as ammonia, which is NH3, via nitrogen fixation. So they use the symbiotic relationship, the rhizobium, and they convert this atmospheric nitrogen to usable compounds such as ammonia, and in that way they'll be able to utilize the nitrogen in the forms of nitrates or ammonia, which is from the environment. So simply you can answer this question as CO2 will be obtained with the process of photosynthesis and N2 can be obtained with the nitrogen fixation process. With this, your 1 mark question will be sorted. The question here clearly states that what will happen to a plant if its xylem is removed. So what will happen if xylem is removed from the plant? So you can answer this since it is a 1 mark question itself. So you can answer this in 2 or 3 lines is enough. So if xylem is removed, first of all, what is the function of xylem? So it is used in the transport of water and minerals. So since it is used in the transport of water and minerals, when you remove the xylem, what will happen? This particular function will not be happening. As simple as that. So the plant will lose its ability to transport water and minerals from the roots to its leaves. So what will happen? The water will not be supplied sufficiently to all the different parts of the plant, and it will not be able to receive the necessary nutrients and water. So what will happen? The plant will start to wilt and eventually will lead to its death. So what will happen is that xylem, if it's not functioning, its function will not be happening. Since water and minerals are not supplied adequately to the plant, it will dry up and eventually will lead to its death. So this is how you can write your answer. So if a plant xylem is removed, the plant will lose its ability to transport water and minerals from the roots to the leaves, leading it to wilt and eventually die because the tissues will not receive necessary nutrients and water. The question here is that name the green dot like structure in some cells observed by a student when a leaf peel was viewed under a microscope. And what is this green color due to? So it is a 1 mark question. So you can answer this as what is that green dot which you will observe under this for a leaf peel. So what do you think that green dot would be? Obviously that which the student has observed would be a chloroplast. Sorted. And the second part is why or what is this green color due to? Why is that we can see it in green color? So it is because of the green color pigment, which is chlorophyll. Sorted. So that's the only thing they've asked in this, that what is that you are observing, what is a green dot and why is it in green color. So he wrote it is chloroplast and it is in the green color because of the green pigment, which is chlorophyll. The next question is an MCQ question. So in the living organisms during respiration, which of the following products are not formed if oxygen is not available? So it is important to note that they are asking which is not formed and if oxygen is not available. So basically they are speaking about the anaerobic respiration. So when anaerobic respiration is happening, you either expect to get lactic acid from pyruvate or you either get ethanol plus carbon dioxide. But they are asking what is not formed. So there will never be the combination of this lactic acid and alcohol. Either you get lactic acid or either you get ethanol plus CO2. So here the correct answer is option C, that you will never be able to get lactic acid plus alcohol as your products. So they asked what is not formed. So lactic acid plus alcohol will never be formed. So the correct answer to this question is option C, lactic acid plus alcohol. Next question is also an MCQ kind of question. Which one among the following is not removed as a waste product from the plant body? So it is important to note they are asking which is not removed. So these aspects are very important when you're reading your question paper. Read it thoroughly and make sure you make it a point to note where they're asking not or against, for, and all these things are important words which you need to remember. So not. So they have given resins and gums, urea, dry leaves, excess water. So we can see that dry leaves is also correct, excess water is also correct, resins and gums is also correct. So here what is not removed by plant is obviously option B, which is urea, because urea is a nitrogenous waste product which is not removed from the plant body. Instead, plants will recycle this or store this nitrogen compounds like urea for metabolic use, unlike we animals are the ones who actually excrete this urea. So here the correct answer is urea because it is not the product which is removed by the plant as a waste product. Next question is a short answer kind of question. So they're asking us what are the 3 types of blood vessels and give one important feature of each one of them. So we know that we have 3 blood vessels, so we have to name them. So the first one is arteries, veins and capillaries. These are the 3 blood vessels which are in our body, and they asked us about one important feature of each. So very simple, arteries are the ones which carry oxygen rich blood, while veins will carry the deoxygenated blood, and arteries will take the blood away from the heart, while veins will bring the blood towards the heart. You can write that as well. And capillaries. So what is the function of capillaries? They are the thin walls Their thin walls will enable the exchange of oxygen, nutrients and waste products between the blood and the surrounding tissues, and they act as a junction points. So you can write one point whichever you feel like writing about the valves or about the which is broader, which is thinner, and all these things, which has more pressure, which less pressure compared to what, and all these things. In this, any one of the point you can write for each blood vessel. So basically you have to name the three, which is arteries, veins and capillaries, which is important for you in order to get your marks, and whichever point you wanted to write you can mention in this answer. Next question is, write the two different ways in which glucose is oxidized to provide energy in human body, and write the products formed in each case. So you have to remember that they are particularly mentioning about the human body, and what they asked, the two different ways in which glucose is oxidized. So we know that we primarily have two pathways in which glucose is oxidized. It can either be aerobic when we have sufficient oxygen, and it can be anaerobic. So if you want to, if it's a long answer, you can make a flow chart like this and write your answer, or if it's for a short answer, then write it normally as in, you write it normally your answer in point wise. For presentation purposes, flow charts will give some good impression. So anaerobic respiration and aerobic respiration. So what they asked, write the two different ways in which glucose is oxidized. So here you can see that glucose is fully oxidized. So in this aerobic form, we can see that glucose is fully oxidized, while here glucose is partially oxidized. You can write this as your first point. And then they asked us about, write the products formed in each case. So they are asking about human body. So it is important to remember that point as well. So what will be products formed in aerobic form? It will be CO2, H2O and a lot of ATP, which is energy. While here we get limited ATP in anaerobic form. In aerobic form we get lot of ATP, which is energy. So what are products which are formed in anaerobic respiration? We get lactic acid. They are speaking about human beings. So lactic acid, and we get ATP. So this is how you can write your answer. If it's for a long answer, you have to mention it properly with all the steps and all these things. But if it's for a short answer, writing like this will be able to gain, you will be able to gain marks. Next question, they are asking that, name the organs that form the excretory system in human beings. So what are the organs which form excretory system in human beings? So if it's for 1 mark, you can simply write it as kidneys, ureter, urinary bladder, urethra. You will be sorted if it's for 1 mark. If it is for 2 marks, you have to even write some primary functions of these, like it is used to filter blood in order to form urine. Ureter is used to transport urine from where to where? From kidney to bladder. And urinary bladder is the one which stores urine temporarily. And what is the function of urethra? It is conducts the urine from the bladder out of the body. So these are the functions of these particular organs. So if they ask about the organs, you can just simply name it as kidney, ureters, urinary bladder and urethra. If it's for 2 marks or 3 marks, you have to write the particular functions along with the organs as well. Since they won't ask about name the organs in 5 marks obviously, But if it's so for a longer question, you have to even elaborate all these things along with a proper diagram, some legible diagram, and all these things will be enough. So like this you can answer this kinds of question. Next, moving to the MCQ kind of question. Here they are asking us, we have to identify the two components of phloem tissue that help in the transportation of food in plants. They said they've given us phloem parenchyma or sieve tubes and companion cells, phloem parenchyma and companion cells, phloem fibers and sieve tubes. So the correct answer, we all know that the answer would be option B, which is sieve tubes and companion cells, because sieve tubes are responsible for the actual transport of organic nutrients like sugars, while companion cells will assist the sieve tubes by providing the metabolic support and helping in loading and unloading of the solutes. So the correct answer would be option B, that is sieve tubes and sieve companion cells, which is for the transport of food in plants. Moving to long answer kind of questions. So in this we have 3 questions combined in a single one. So what is it? We have to define excretion, name the basic filtration unit which is present in the kidney, and draw the excretory system in human beings and label the following organs of this excretory system which perform the following functions. So we have to identify what are these and label this in the diagram which we have drawn. So basically they are asking us in the first part is to define excretion. So you have to place point A, first part, and then write that whatever the definition you feel like writing for excretion. So excretion is the biological process of removing waste products. Don't write like how I am writing in your exam. Write in proper legible handwriting, understandable handwriting. It's not like you have to write in your calligraphy forms or anything of such sorts, but it have to be properly understood by the person who is correcting your paper. They have to feel like correcting your paper. It's not like they shouldn't find it difficult to correct your paper. So what I have written is excretion is the biological process of removing waste products and excess substances from the body to maintain homeostasis. So when you write such things like homeostasis and excess substances, removing waste products, make sure you underline the important points which you have written so that they'll be clearly visible to the eyes of your examiner or the person who is correcting your paper. Sorted. First part, which they asked us to define this, and we have completed that. Second, B part is to name the basic filtration unit present in the kidney. So what is the basic filtration unit? It is nephron. But don't just simply write nephron. Right? Nephron is the basic filtration unit which is present in the kidney. Even though it is a 1 mark question, but you need to make sure that you at least write it some 2 lines. So if they asked name it, you have to name it as nephron is the basic filtration unit and so which is provided in the question. Next, C part is we have to draw the excretory system in human beings and label it. So simply draw the excretory system in human beings and you have to name the following. So which form urine? Which is the one which forms urine? It is kidney. And which is a long tube which collects urine from kidney? It is ureter. We have already seen all this in the previous question itself. And which one will store urine until it is passed? That is the urinary bladder. So you have to label this in the diagram which you have drawn. And then you are sorted with the 5 mark or question or 4 mark question. Starting with the case-based questions. So here they'll be providing us with a paragraph, and mostly they'll be even giving us some picture related to it. So in the figure shown below, so if they are stating something like this, it is evident that we will be getting a picture. Shows a common type of dialysis called the hemodialysis. It removes waste products from blood such as excess salts and urea, which are insufficiently removed by the kidney in patients with kidney failure. During the procedure, the patient's blood is cleaned by the filtration through a series of semi-permeable membranes before being returned to the blood of the patient. On the basis of this, answer the following questions. So the first question is that a hemodialyzer has a semi-permeable lining of tubes which help either to maintain osmotic pressure of the blood, to filter nitrogenous waste from the dialyzing solution, in passing the wastage products in the dialyzing solution, to pump the purified blood back. So why is there a semi-permeable membrane tube? That is what they are asking in this question. So it is very simple. Why is it there? Because it has to filter the nitrogenous waste from the dialyzing solution. It has to filter the nitrogenous waste. That is the reason why we have the semi-permeable membrane. Moving to the next question. So the next question in that case-based question is that which one of the following is not a function of artificial kidney? So it is important to note that we have written it as not. So is it not to remove the nitrogenous waste from the blood, to remove excess fluids from the blood, to reabsorb essential nutrients from the blood, to filter and purify the blood? So the answer is option C. It is to reabsorb essential nutrients from the blood. Next question. The used dialyzing solution is rich in what? Obviously it will be rich in urea and excess salts, because that is the reason why we are using this solution, is to remove this urea and excess salts from our blood. So the used dialyzing solution will obviously be rich in urea and excess salts. Next question. Which part of the nephron in human beings serves the function of the reabsorption of certain substances? So reabsorption is done in the tubules. So in nephron, the renal tubules, especially the proximal convoluted tubule, are primarily responsible for the reabsorption of substances from the filtered back into the bloodstream. So in this way, they will be providing us an essay and they'll be asking us questions, some MCQs based on this, and this is how you have to solve the case-based questions. So now we have come to the assertion and reason kind of questions. So the assertion is that nitrogen is an essential element for the plant growth and is taken up by the plants in the form of inorganic nitrates and nitrites. It is true. Next, reason. The soil is the nearest and the richest source of raw materials like nitrogen, phosphorus and other minerals to the plant. Obviously the reason is also true, but what we want is assertion and reason. So for this particular statement, the reason should be the correct explanation. So whenever you read the assertion, you have to ask the question why. If that why question is answered by this reason, then you can go to the first option, which is both A and R, assertion and reason, are true and R is the correct explanation. If the why question is not answered, then you can say that it is not the correct explanation. But initially, when you read both the statements, if one is true and one is false, then either of the C and D options you can go with. So first read both the questions, and if you're sorted with these two options, you're good to go. But if not, then you have to ask the why question and identify either you have to go with option A or option B. So here we know that when we ask the why question for this above statement, what they have given, nitrogen is an essential element for the plant growth and is taken up by the plants in the form of inorganic nitrites and nitrates. But why is not answered in this reason. So our answer will be option B, which is both A and B are true. Both assertion and reason are true, but R is not the correct explanation of this assertion. Next question. Hydrochloric acid helps in the digestion of food in the stomach. Reason. Hydrochloric acid creates an acidic medium to activate the protein digesting enzymes. Here we can see that assertion is true. Assertion is true. Reason is also true. So these two options are eliminated. You need not answer these two questions anymore. So we have the option between these two. Either it is a correct explanation or either it is not the correct explanation. So you can see that reason is the correct explanation for this assertion. So we need to go with option A, that is both A and B are true. And reason is the correct explanation of the assertion. So in this way you have to answer the assertion reason kind of questions. So we are asked in the next question that what is photosynthesis and explain its mechanism. So first you have to know either it is asked for 1 mark, 2 mark or for 5 mark questions, and write according to the marks which are awarded for that question. For suppose if it's asked for 2 marks or some 3 marks and you go on and write what all you know, it's just waste of time, because how much you write you will be getting those 3 marks only. So make sure to look at how many answers are questions, how much is awarded for that question, and then make up your answer according to the marks. So here first we have to write what is photosynthesis. So you can write it as a process by which green plants, algae and some bacteria will convert the light energy, usually from the sun, into the chemical energy which is stored in the form of glucose. And then you will write about the light dependent reactions and the Kelvin cycle, which is light independent reactions. And it is important to note that in this kinds of questions you write your equation of photosynthesis. You need to remember the equation of photosynthesis, which is very, very important. C6H12O6 plus 6O2. You need to write the balanced proper equation, which is 6CO2 plus 6H2O plus light energy will give rise to C6H12O6 plus 6CO2. And also write chlorophyll and sunlight along with your equation to make it a complete proper equation. And write about the light dependent, light independent reactions and all these things in detail regarding photosynthesis according to the marks which are awarded for that question. Next question. Explain the 3 pathways of the breakdown of glucose in living organisms. So you've already seen about these things properly in the previous questions as well. So according to the marks awarded, answer the questions, and you answer this question in your notes properly, and make sure you understand the way you're presenting your answers properly, and make sure that the examiner will be able to understand what you're writing. Write in legible handwriting, in understandable handwriting, and make sure that when people look at your handwriting, they will be able to see the important words or the points. So if you wanted to highlight something, make sure that you either write it in capitals or underline what you have written. So I hope in this video you have got to understand the various questions which can be asked, and the different kinds like MCQs for 2 marks, 1 mark, assertion, reason, case-based questions, and all these things are sorted. So if you're further interested to know or understand more questions, then comment below for the Menti quiz, so that I'll be conducting it in live as well if the response is good. Thank you so much. Hope you have understood.